So in this video, we are going to move away from the neuron and talk about the little helper cells. We saw in lab that under the microscope they look like little dots. These are actually very important cells, and we've learned a lot more through research that these cells play a huge role in like dementia, Alzheimer's, etc. So we're going to talk about the different neuroglia cells or glia cells. Either way, they're called. So we're going to look at the ones in the central nervous system on this video. In the next video, we'll look at the ones that are on the peripheral nervous system. So you should have a chart in your notes to be able to fill this out. So we're going to start with the central nervous system glia cells. So the first one, so you should have a chart like this in your notes, is called astrocytes. And they're called astrocytes because they, under the microscope, kind of look like a star. And so what they do is they form what's called a blood-brain barrier, and they're going to help, they basically attach themselves to a blood vessel and the neuron, and they're kind of like a go-between, and so they're going to protect your brain from things that might get into your brain that shouldn't get there. So they make a barrier, things that are coming in through the blood vessel, etc. So it says found in blood vessel and neurons, participate in blood-brain barrier, and transfer nutrients from the blood system to the neuron. So I have this little picture, maybe it'll help you see it a little bit better. So this green guy over here is the astrocyte, and so he's holding on to a blood vessel here, and he's holding on to the neuron. So if something's coming through the blood that should not make its way to the neuron, this guy is like a defense mechanism, but it also will take some nutrients that the neuron might need through diffusion. So it's called, move that over a little bit, it's called an astrocyte because it does have a star shape to it. And so that is our first one, part of the central nervous system. So remember, central nervous system is the brain, and the spinal cord is where we find astrocytes. And so there's a picture of it under the microscope. And so our next one is called oligodendrocytes. Oligodendrocytes do the same thing as Schwann cells do in the peripheral nervous system. So the Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system make the myelin sheath, and we talked about how that helps speed up the action potential. So oligodendrocytes will do that same thing in the central nervous system. The difference is this one cell, just one cell, can do multiple axons, where in Schwann cells it's multiple swans that are on one axon. This is one cell per mini axon. So let me show you a picture here. And so this little blue guy here is the oligodendrocyte, and he is myelinating, this one, particular one is myelinating this axon here, and this axon. So one cell can myelinate many, and this is the way it works in your brain and your spinal cord. In your peripheral nervous system, those nerves in your arms and legs and those spinal nerves, etc., those are Schwann cells, and they can only do one little area on one cell. It's like, I can only work right there. That's what a Schwann cell does. A oligodendrocyte's like, oh, I can work over here, and I can work over here, and I can work over here, and I can do it all at the same time. So if you see a picture like this, that's going to be central nervous system, and that will be the oligodendrocytes. But they are making that myelin sheath, that protective, that insulating material on the axon. And so our next guy is known as the microglia. And so these are very micro, means small, very small cells, and they usually stay small unless you get some sort of infection. So they're like part of your immune for your brain. And then they enlarge and become what's called a macrophage. So macro means it's going to bigger, and it's going to destroy phages, so viruses and things. So this again is like your protection guy. It kind of reminds me of like a Pokemon. So it starts out really small like Pikachu, and then it becomes, big. Forgot what his name is, but you guys maybe if you know Pokemon. So microglia are really important. The microglia, they pick up debris and stuff that gets on the axon. So real important. So we talk about tau proteins and things with Alzheimer's disease and stuff. So these are like the cleanup crew. And so when these stop working, then debris and stuff will build up on the axon, the dendrites, and we can't fire signals. So it causes, memory loss, etc. So our microglias are very, very important. And so here's a picture. I stole this from the Brain Institute here. So this shows a lot of the different things that the microglia will do. Phagocytosis, it is central nervous system. It will handle cell debris, those misformed proteins, the tau, amyloid proteins, etc. So they are big, big, big time protectors of the neuron. So our next guy is the epidermal cells, and these are stratified columnar epithelial tissue that gets lined. That's where we find these cells, and they line the ventricles of your brain and your spinal cord. And we'll see those in lab, and what they do is they produce your cerebral spinal fluid, which keeps it flowing, etc. So they're the makers of your spinal fluid, and we're going to see them. They're going to be, we'll see in lab little areas that they are handling those. So your epidermal cells help give that spinal fluid for your brain and your spinal cord. Alright, so these are our 4 that are in the central nervous system. Our next video will be going over the 2 that are in our peripheral nervous system.